Even better. Perfect. Oh, pop, pop. Like you mean it. I still have packaged sites. And I'm gonna clean up my work area here. My casual area. Oh, yeah.
Let's get these people some sound effects.
Finally going. Man, what a pain in the butt that one was today. She just didn't want to roll. I don't think all this wood's perfectly seasoned just yet. Yeah, it's recording. I can see the little red thing. How's your impulse control not being able to see that? How you doing? You doing good?
The control freak in me doesn't like it. But what do you think about the girth of these microphones?
It's pretty intimidating, to be honest. I mean, you're getting to a point that I'm not sure exactly what you would do with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're recording without stands because our little set here is still a WIP.
Work in progress, folks.
Oh, you know that? WIP?
Well, I kind of figured it out because I was going to say work in progress when you said WIP.
Do you know about BPF?
No.
Butt pucker factor.
Yeah, there you go. I figured butt was in there somewhere.
Yeah, butt pucker factor.
Yeah.
So welcome back to the podcast that kind of has a name now. People are into it.
Yeah. Well, have we actually had a name, though, or just there's a demand?
Well, people keep calling it they like the Fireside thing. There's been a couple other cool ideas, but the Fireside thing is like sticking. So
yeah, I've had a couple of comments that's hard to search. So hopefully, maybe we'll just have the most significant Fireside Chats and it'll be good. Oh, did we open already? Hang on.
Yeah, let's get you popped. Pop that
pop
top,
my
son.
coffee here. Hang on.
Pop that top, son.
It is late afternoon. I need my cold coffee.
I feel much better today that I can kind of monitor our audio levels while we do this too.
Yeah, I guess at some point we'll have to put an external monitor on that camera so you can see it, so you'll chill the hell out.
Yeah. No, it's good for me. It's
Can't
good for me
it.
to. It's good for me to not see it. Yeah. Here we are from the man cave. You know it's a man cave because there's a sign on the wall.
Yeah, just in case anybody was confused, we actually did label it just for security purposes.
And that's real wood.
That is.
Who chopped it?
Actually, I got that off a guy off Marketplace because I ran out and it was too late in the winter to get any. So, but I did split it. So, yes, these old arms did break some of that apart. It all had to be broken up 2 or 3 times over. But
as proven in the intro, you know how to split wood.
Yeah, and next year I'll do all my own firewood. It's been a transition from one place to another with my life in the last year, so I didn't have a whole bunch of time. But I will get my own firewood. I'll rope my cousin into it, and we may use some machinery and equipment to make life a little easier, but we'll definitely do our own firewood this coming year.
Today's a big day. Do you know why?
Why is today a big day, Tim?
Because
other than it's Louie's birthday.
It's Louie's birthday. That's what I was going to say. It's my dog's birthday.
Happy birthday, Louie. How old's Louie now?
He's my oldest.
Yeah.
He's 7 years old.
He's rocking a nap.
What I was told is that at 7 years old, dogs are considered a senior citizen. Do you know that if that's true?
Well, I wouldn't doubt it, although I thought that dog years were 7 years. Chloe, get back. So 7 years would be 49, so I don't know. That's a young senior.
It's not AARP eligible, but
no,
close.
No bennies yet. Got another half year of dog life to go.
So episode 1, people liked. That's cool.
Yeah. We're filming this the same day it aired, actually. So we've only seen it go for half a day, or not even quite half a day yet. But it does seem like it's getting some views, and people are liking it. So it's encouraging to continue forward and move on and have a little bit more of a plan. But so far so good.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was okay. Today's been really interesting. I did a Bowtech versus Mathews shoot-off.
Ah, did you now?
Target bow versus hunting bow, 36 versus 34. So different. It's not an apples-to-apples comparison, and it's not exactly scientific, but it was what I did, with my experience, and that's, worth something, isn't it?
Are we sharing the results yet, or are you going to make them watch your YouTube video to find out?
Well, it's going to come out, so I think we should share it. They should definitely watch the YouTube video because it was surprising, but we should talk about it. Yeah, what do you want to know about it?
Well, I want to know what your parameters were for testing all this stuff, because I kind of feel like there may have been some fuckery about, depending on the results you got.
All right, we're going to pop that top,
Oh,
son.
look at that. There we go. Now we can close her.
One thing about the man cave is it's not as warm without the fire.
We have one source of heat in here, and it's firewood. So you got to burn a fire if you're cold, and it's still kind of chilly even in our April. So yeah, we definitely still have to have a fire going, but I like it that way anyway.
Yeah. What I did was I shot it. What do you call the scoring that goes 11, 10, 8, 5?
If the 11's in the middle of the target is IBO scoring. So that's center on center. Yeah. IBO.
So I did IBO traditional scoring, shot the 3D targets, and I just tried to shoot a mix of distances, starting at 30 yards, and I shot probably 30, 40, 50, 60, side hill, flat, finished at the world famous Moose, Spokane Valley Archery.
Yeah, there's going to be 2 out there pretty soon, and
That's
a
what I
little farther
told
away.
them. That's why I mentioned that. But tell me more about that, because that's one of the things I'm most excited for.
I think I spent $20,000 in additional targets, so I'm just going to have more, pretty much. And we got a bunch of replacement cores, so some of the older targets don't necessarily have to go away, so they're still around. They'll just be more shots on the same space, because we have a limited amount of space to be able to hold all that. But we're trying to have some of the longer shots have multiple targets and big targets, so you can have a little bit more to play with. It's already one of the nicer courses you can find, but I just want it to be ridiculous.
And those things are sneaky expensive.
Oh yeah, moose target's like $3,000.
Yeah, I was going to have them guess before we told them, but isn't that wild?
Shit, sorry.
World,
we don't have much of a plan here, folks. We're just talking.
The world famous Moose is expensive.
It is.
And he shot up.
It is.
But now we're going to have a double?
Yeah, so I got a new core for that one, and
Nice.
then I also ordered a new one. I actually ordered, like every target that we had, I just doubled up pretty much for the most part. So like the stag, I think there'll be 2 stags. The elk, there'll be 2 elk, or there already is 2 elk. There might be a third. We're just gonna spread it around a little more and just make it that much nicer, because at the end of the day, it's enjoyable. We like it, and we want it to be impressive.
Yeah.
I might even have like a permanent ground blind position. Might even have an elevated platform. We'll see.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, just to make it, just spice it up a little bit.
But
we're
going to play with the location a little bit of the Moose. I don't know that the majority of the course is so well set up now that I've shot a lot. I kind of understand where you have an uphill, you have a downhill, you have a side hill.
Yeah.
So you're really hitting all the bases when you work your way around it.
Yeah, the point of it when we laid it out was to be able to practice any type of situation scenario that you would run into in real world, to test your equipment and make sure it's actually set right. I.e. uphill, downhill, side hill, tunnels, out in the wind, the whole bit. But the only other thing we could really improve on or change is the Moose and move it even farther away. Because everybody backs up anyway. I mean, it's like, well, how far can we set this just to be safe? So you should be able to push out from the standard shooting station well over 100 without having to get out of the mode area. So since everybody does it anyway, I guess I might as well do it.
Yeah. So I shot standard IBO scoring, shot a mix of targets, and it was close, man. It was really close. And I guess I've heard you say a couple times, like, well, if you're shooting out to 40 yards, it doesn't really matter. And it matters, but from a hunting perspective, like the accuracy is going to be similar.
Yeah.
From a target perspective, you want to max everything out or whatever.
Yeah.
But
you don't see accuracy in a bow until you get a longer ways away, because almost everything is relatively forgiving and relatively accurate anymore in design.
Yeah.
But those differences start showing their head past 40. So you start shooting farther away, and all of a sudden the difference between a bow will show itself. But before that, you'd have a hard time telling a difference, really.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I saw, was the 0 to 40 yards similar.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I had a pretty good groove with my Mathews too. And 60 to 100 yards, similar but different. They started to separate a little bit. And yeah. But at the end of the day, the score was only separated by a couple points. So, if you're the person who's just a hunter and you're just taking that, you're like, well, maybe a hunting bow's, you can do a lot with a hunting bow. It's like that old thing where you should first learn to use your equipment really well, and then you really see the benefit of some of that other stuff.
To be able to understand and appreciate the differences, yeah, for sure. You have to get familiar with what you already have so you can tell.
Yeah. Well, man, we should talk about archery some. I mean, we talked about bows, but there's this question. So there's always these there's these things that people have that are, say, major intersections of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
One I want you to talk about is how stiff is too stiff.
Well, that depends on who you're asking there, Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah. So practically,
Yeah.
as long as you're not gaining weight for it to be stiffer, there is no such thing as too stiff, in my opinion. Because an arrow is going to flex with a given amount of pressure, right? I'm assuming we're talking about arrows. We're talking about arrows? We're not talking about middle-aged man issues?
Yeah, we're talking about arrows.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Just clarifying.
Yeah.
So an arrow is going to flex to a certain point, and then it just can't flex farther before it runs into deviation. So that's why you have to have a given amount of spine.
Yeah.
So if you have a 300 spine arrow and it flexes this far, and then if you have a 250 spine arrow and it only flexes that far, this is going to recover faster. So the amount of movement, because it flexes back and forth as you fire it, right? Mm-hmm. And then as it goes down range, that amount of flex slows down to where it doesn't bend at all anymore. So a stiffer arrow is going to recover faster. You can only really have too weak of an arrow, but the negative that you run into with most arrows that you look at is a stiffer arrow is always heavier. And sometimes it's drastically heavier. There's a couple of weird random applications if you look at every arrow manufacturer and every spine chart and the GPI per spine where you'll find random changes where for one reason or another it's not really heavier, and it's usually when they change from an ID or an OD change to change the spine and a wall thickness change, and you'll run into instances where you can actually get a stiffer arrow that weighs less or a stiffer arrow that hardly weighs anymore. And if you're in that sweet spot, that's definitely a way to go. A good example is the RIP TKO. So a RIP TKO from a 350 to a 300 to a 250 is 1/10 of a grain an inch heavier as you go up in spine. So there's virtually no increase. So in that arrow, which is TKO, you shoot a 250, I don't believe there is such a thing as a negative in that. But you'll run into typically a grain or more per inch of increase for 50 spine deflection. That's a lot. So, and it's not just as simple as, oh, I just added a grain, or if your arrow's 30 inches long, 30 grains to your arrow. Now you've got to put more weight in the front to offset the FOC as well. So it's not just that weight. If you're trying to make an equivalent equal projectile, you're going to end up with a lot more overall weight in that scenario. And that's, in my opinion, not good. So, but is there such a thing as too stiff? No, I don't think there is.
Is there a sweet spot for speed? Does that flexing create any more or less speed?
If it's optimal, so like right out of the bow, no. But one of the things that we're hoping to test going forward is some downrange differences.
With what? What would you test?
Well, I've got a lab radar that I bought off of eBay, actually used. I'm cheap. Sorry, I didn't buy a new one.
Yeah.
And then bought the Archery activated trigger. And then I have a couple of chronographs that I've used for years that I'm going to set it up behind a target with a core removed. So as long as you shoot through the core, you're going through the chronograph, and we're going to test them against each other and see how accurate one is versus another. But if you shoot an incredibly underspined arrow that weighs the same as a stiff arrow, downrange, the underspined arrow is going to lose speed faster. And it'll be one of those tests that we can do for fun to see how much it makes a difference. Mm-hmm. So also with the slow-mo cam and some graphs, we'll be able to see how much flex it changes when you're putting a stiffer arrow, weaker arrow, and how much farther it deviates or changes.
Yeah, we got this really cool slow-mo cam that's basically
can you see that back there?
It's been a prop.
We used it 2 weeks ago for the first time.
Yeah. What we're learning, though, is that with such an extreme situation, everything needs to be beefed up around it.
Yeah.
So the internal SD card is beefed up. We need a ton of light to beef it up. We got some good lights. So we're on the road.
$1,000 on lights last week.
Yeah, we're on the road to getting there. But yeah, if they have cool ideas for the super slow-mo cam, I'm very interested. This is really like tingling my slow-mo feels.
Yeah, for the the producer in you is
Yes.
probably just like, oh, these are going
Yeah.
to look so cool. I just want to see stuff explode when you hit it, and watch that. That was more the intriguing thing.
I want to see arrows flex. I want to see
Yeah.
stuff explode.
Yeah.
I want to see bows flex, strings flex.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what a bow does when you really slow it down. Like, you wouldn't want to hang on to it. It's kind of frightening looking.
Yeah.
I remember when Easton came out with their, I think they call it Easton Technical Bulletin Video 1. Now, this was in VHS tape days. So unless you're old, you probably don't know what that is. But we used to have rental videos at the Outdoor Sportsman way back when, which was my dad's store before we made Spokane Valley Archery. And we had like a video rental section of like 400 videos that were all hunting videos. And one of the random
What about the
videos
ones
that was in there.
like around the corner behind the black curtain?
Oh, we didn't have those. No, wrong store. But yeah, those existed though, but not
Yeah,
in our store.
that was back when you went to the store.
Yeah, that was back when you went to the store and to be like, feel like the dirty guy in the back room. That's kind of messed up. But we had this one random video that was the Easton Technical Bulletin, and when they came out with that, they had slow motion. I want to say it was 10,000 frames a second, and you could watch a target sight like do this when it fired. Like, it was amazing how much stuff was moving. Everything looked like a wet spaghetti noodle flopping around in the wind. And it was terrifying. And when that video came out, like 8 or 9 different accessory manufacturers changed how they made their products because they had no idea that it was moving and flexing that much. And there hasn't really been a video come out since then like that. So, and I always, whenever I'd show that to people, they'd like blow their mind. So I thought, why not play with that a little bit more in the future and see what it looks like.
Yeah, it's pretty rad. It's pretty rad. It's got a lot of potential.
I'm real curious to see how much better bows look, because this was like late 80s bow technology.
Yeah, and you said companies were paying attention back then when they saw that?
Yeah, they literally changed multiple different things on what they did because they had no idea it was moving so much.
Have you seen, or do you think, are these companies paying attention to the feedback that you're giving them? Or
Oh, for me? Yeah. Well, I can only I can take example.
guesstimate?
I guarantee you that they're doing it differently. Like one company, and rather than name names, I'm just not going to name names.
We're not
but
naming names?
I didn't say. I didn't speak super highly of their bow speeds last year.
Oh, okay.
So, and I was contacted by that company, and they asked me to take the video down. And I'm like, this is a really bad idea. Like, I'm telling you, this is not a good idea. I understand you don't like what it says. I understand you don't like the results that I got, but it'll be 10 times worse if I take it down.
Yeah.
So many people are going to want to know why.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to answer those questions. Plus, I'm not willing to flex on my integrity because
Yeah.
This is what I did. I know for a fact this is what I got, and I'm not going to take it down. However, that same company this year had the least deviation in their speed. So they were 17 feet slow last year. They were 4 feet slow this year, which was the best one I tested. So I know that one was paying attention for sure. I've been contacted by most of them just to say positive things and whatnot. I remember last year was the first time that I remember calling a manufacturer that, if somebody calls the shop and I pick up the phone frequently, within a minute, they'd go, "Is this MFJJ?" Like, because I try not to answer the phone, honestly, because I just get stuck on the phone all day if I do. But I called a manufacturer to order something. They got about a minute and a half in, and I got, "Is this MFJJ?" I'm like, "Why are you
Damn it.
listening?"
Damn it.
So yeah, they're aware. They pay attention, and I never really thought they would to that extent, but they definitely do. Chloe, knock it off, man. Go.
She's cool. She's cool.
Yeah, but geez. All right, so we decided to let the dogs in here, and now
Yeah.
two are very behaved, and then mine apparently is not. Yeah, it definitely makes a difference, and they're conscious of what's going on, and it's just interesting to think that this little YouTube thing can actually make real change. But it reinforces what you're doing. It reminds you that this actually does do something, and maybe you should put some more energy into it. But that was part of why I started my video series on the bows the way I was doing it, because I was pointing out their dishonesty. When they test bows, they test them in a manner which you or I would never be able to hunt with them, ever. They're testing it with a spring rest holding the arrow on because it's faster. They're pulling it back till it hits the back wall and immediately firing it because it comes off faster. They're shooting an arrow without fletchings on it. You ain't going to do that ever, other than trying to tune something. They'll usually drop strand count in a string that they're on the bow they're going to test.
It's like
it is 100%.
It's like the 90s in baseball or whatever.
Yeah, which didn't they remove that? I thought they're bringing the juice back into baseball.
Oh, I don't know.
I heard that recently.
I don't know.
Like
I
they
haven't
took
followed
that out.
sports that closely, but
yeah, I don't watch baseball, but just because it takes too damn long.
Yeah.
But I heard that the other day. Like they're letting it back in. Maybe people weren't as enjoyable. It's like let them all take the needle.
I don't know, but that's what it reminded me of when you're talking about these archery companies.
Yeah, right. They're definitely, and they all do it. They're all guilty of it. Nobody's clean. Nobody's innocent. They'll fudge their overall draw length a little bit because it'll make it come out faster. Dude, they'll frequently do not a half, but like a quarter to 3/8 long.
Oh, okay.
If you actually measure it out, which next year's bow reviews will have physical draw length measurements in them because my draw board that's being manufactured right now will actually have a measuring tool in it.
Yeah, and we're not naming names about that, right?
Yeah,
it's tough.
I hate to talk about stuff until it's actually done, but
but you can test it and show it in the future as it happens.
I will,
and that's the best way to do it.
No, I'm going to do that, and I'm also going to shoot 3 different weights of arrows in it. Like 350 grain arrows, 450 grain arrows, and 550 grain arrows. So you can get true speed variances in arrows that you'd actually use as opposed to, almost no one's going to use a 350 grain arrow, but that's the way they're testing it. So I'm going to add those into next year's bow reviews and possibly one other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my plan. But I like the fact that if you can hold them a little accountable, they'll actually do something about it.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
pretty
real
neat.
thing. That's what checks and balances are for. That's what one net benefit of the internet is like. People can't fudge stuff as much anymore.
It's hard to be
dishonest. And companies
dishonest.
can't be dishonest. Like that gets called out in reviews and social media, and people see that. So
Well, and honestly, your level of sincerity or authenticity is also people figure it out. They just do.
Yeah,
they can, and whoever you are as a person comes out eventually, and it's hard to be disingenuous. Really, it just is. People pick up on it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But yeah, bow speeds are lied about. Now, no, they're not lying because they can technically get it. But I mean, if I pulled the bow back and ran at a chronograph and fired it from a running position and it was 2 feet faster, is it really 2 feet faster? No.
Yeah.
But whatever you got to do to move that needle.
Yeah, every couple of feet, and then they say, "Oh, we're only 5 or 10 feet off," and that might be true, but that might be only 5 or 10 feet off from the peak of,
the highest level of performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's why when I get a crap ton of comments in my videos, man, your chronograph must be broken. It's like, if you notice, they're all between 7 and 12 feet slow across the board. My chronograph's not broken, folks. That's just they're not testing bows in a fair and honest manner that it's actually going to get that output. Now, a long time ago, I want to say it was 10, 15 years ago, Hoyt would put a speed out you could actually hit. Like, they were the only one back in the day, and they would argue for years that, hey, this is what this bow really can do. You might be able to actually improve it from where it is.
Oh, wow.
But their speeds were 10 to 15 feet slower than the manufactured speeds of everybody else. So they finally gave in and just fudged it because everybody was doing it. And after a while, it's like, is this costing me money? Is this costing me sales? Is this costing me business? And they eventually gave in. But they were the last one that still gave you a true published speed. I remember back in the 90s, Martin was really popular. And they were publishing speeds that were 15 feet a second faster than anybody else by a long shot. And what they did...
They weren't just magically faster?
No, they were 1.25 inches long. An inch of draw length is somewhere between 10 and 15 feet on average. Now, that varies a lot depending on if you're functionally making a cam for each inch, if it's a pivoting module, where that module is peaking at per length. I mean, there's a lot of variables that go into that speed difference, which is why I simply say 10 to 15 feet a second difference. But if your bow is physically 1 inch plus longer, you're going to be 15 feet a second faster than anybody else. So the whole Martin Fury is what it was. And that whole series of cams, if you ever called them to change your length, they would tell you to use 1 inch shorter minimum of whatever you were testing because it was just that much longer, and that's where the speed came from. There's no magic pill. There's no, this bow just happens to be so much faster. They're fudging somewhere. They're changing something somewhere. They're making it to where it might produce it, but it's kind of dishonest in the manner in which they're coming up with it.
Yeah.
So that's why I tested bows the way I did. I want it to be blatant and obvious.
Dude, you put some cool 3D stuff on the calendar this year.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember what all I'm doing.
Well, the next one I think is the cool one, that your next event.
I don't know, which one is it? Oh, Reading?
Yeah, dude.
Okay, well, no, I've got like 4 or 5 things. I haven't even finished marking my calendar down. So, but yeah, Reading is the largest outdoor tournament in the West.
Right.
And it's 1,800, 1,900 people, something like that.
That's cool.
Yeah, doing that first part of May. And
you've been before?
Yes, I have. Thank you for reminding me because I still have to cut and insert my arrows that I built because I haven't even shot that bow yet.
I was thinking you still had time. I mean, you still got what? What do you got?
Well,
I mean,
it's hard because the guys I'm going with, like, they're here 3 days a week minimum, and they're out there shooting, and they're doing their third access, and my bow hasn't even been fired yet. I'm like, oh, it's going to be embarrassing if I don't get off my butt because these guys know how to shoot.
They're grinders, dude.
Yeah, they really are. It's a passion. But that tournament, last time I went, I think I had only been married a year or two, and I was married for 18 years. So figure out the math on that. And that tournament was held over her birthday.
Oh.
So I was allowed to go once, and then after that, don't ask me again. So all this time I hadn't been able to go. I had a great time. Love that tournament. It's just a great event. And there's, they usually put like a higher level group with a smaller group ahead of them on the same target. So you constantly will see, famous people like for shooting, not for having a good personality or being entertaining on YouTube, but actual guys that are really good at archery.
Yeah.
In front of you or behind you frequently, which is pretty cool. But that tournament is one of the funnest tournaments I've ever been to. And I'd like to get in the habit of going every year. There's really no reason now that I can't. There's no conflicts or anything like that. And it's not a terrible drive from here. It's 10 hours or something like that. So it's not horrible.
It's a good road trip.
Yeah, it's a good road trip. And you take 3 buddies with you in a good-sized truck or that sort of thing. And it's doable. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, I need to shoot, but I'm sitting in here talking to you.
Well, there's still time in the day when we get done with this. I mean,
I got to cook dinner for my kids, man.
Oh, yeah, responsibilities.
Yeah, I got the girls coming over for dinner tonight. So, yeah, those
girls
adult things.
Kids? Or
I have
which one of your girlfriends is coming over?
No, my daughters.
Okay.
So I have a 23-year-old daughter named Taylor and a 17-year-old daughter named Lena.
Yeah.
So, and I cook them all dinner once a week, but Lena stays with me a couple of days a week, and Monday's usually the first day. Hi. Go. Good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm cooking spaghetti and Caesar salad and garlic bread.
But you are back to the dating pool.
Yes, I am back to the dating pool, Tim.
What's that like?
So aren't you? Well, what do you mean? What's that like? You know what it's like. You've been in the dating pool for a while.
I know what it's like at my stage of the game, but I think we're
dude. Come on.
We might be in different generations of people that we're dating or whatever.
Yeah, I do know that it's different for sure. It's not anything like I remembered. And I think when I was single before, I probably wasn't very confident in myself. My grow up life was nothing was ever good enough for my dad, so in my brain I was not good enough, I think, was probably what triggered that. And then after I had gotten married, I think it was a couple years into it, like I finally got past that mentally to where I knew I know I'm good enough. I'm doing great things. I'm, a good person, etc. So my confidence at this age in life is stupid high. And from what I've heard, that's an attractive feature.
Yeah.
So, plus I'm not a terribly bad looking guy.
And they like the mohawk?
Yeah, actually.
Really?
Well, that's gonna weed out whether they like you or not real fast, right? I don't give a shit what people think. I just don't. And if I'm not your cup of tea, then I'm not your cup of tea. Like being told no or being someone not being interested in you does not hurt my feelings one bit because I want everybody to be happy. And if what you're looking at or what you're seeing isn't appealing to you, then move on, please do, and find something that is appealing. Even my ex-wife, I really want you to be happy. Go find something that makes you happy.
Yeah.
Because life's too short to be miserable. It's dumb. Like
Yeah.
there's happiness everywhere you look if you understand what you're looking for and what you're looking at. And people frequently focus on the wrong things or think about all the negative. I mean, there's good in everything that you see and everything that you do. And if you're looking for it, you're going to find it. And when you start looking at things that way,
Yeah.
you are so much happier. It's just stupid how happy you are.
The confidence thing is very interesting. And, maybe people get there differently or whatever, and it's always a work in progress. No one's ever like got no cracks in their shell or whatever. Like everyone's human and everyone has things they worry about or insecurities and stuff. But as I got older, I started to gain confidence as I kind of understood what I wanted or what I was looking for or what made me happy. And when I started to see that, like what made me happy, what fueled my fire, it really helped me be like, it helped the confidence grow a lot.
Sure.
So I don't know if it was similar or different for you or whatever, but
Yeah, I think realizing that I know what's important to me, and if that works with you, then
Yes.
great. But if
Yeah.
it doesn't, then please move on. Like, realize that at this point, you should know what matters to you.
like your core values especially.
Oh, yes.
And there's going to
Yeah.
be compromise or whatever, but
There's compromise with every relationship, but you should have very similar core values to function healthily. If you don't have similar core values, it's going to be a very big challenge. And my previous marriage, we did not have the same values at all, and it was balanceable for a long time, but it was very difficult.
yeah, you talked about that finding happiness everywhere. It's like glass half full, glass half empty kind of thing. But I have a neighbor that is the most interesting dude. Every time I see him, it's like the same story. I come outside, I'll be like, "Hey, how are you?" He'll be like, "Oh, good. It's a little windy. Summer's not here yet." I'll be like, "Oh, but it sure is nice, right? Like, isn't it nice to see the flowers blooming?" And then he'll say something.
Yep.
Yeah, and then I'll just, it's like we've been playing this game for years, but he's not playing a game. That's how actually he sees things, and that's just how he frames it up or whatever.
Which is kind of sad when you think about it.
It is kind of sad.
It
Yeah,
is.
it is. But
It is.
I don't know. I mean, he's a nice guy or whatever, but yeah,
He has no idea how much happier he could be.
yeah.
That's the scary part. People that live that way and act that way and behave that way have no idea how simple it is to be happy when they're choosing to be miserable. Somebody told me this once when I think I was 19 or 20. Gentleman by
Just
the
a
name
young
of
Padawan.
Yeah, a gentleman by the name of Rick Giles actually took the time to say something to me that changed my life. And he worked with me at the archery shop, and I would get frustrated really easily, like frequently. Like I'd get mad about something, and I got irritated about something or other. And he goes, "Josh, you get mad a lot." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "I'm going to tell you something that somebody told me when I was your age, and I really hope it sticks. Every day you get up, you got a choice. You got a choice of whether today is going to be a good day or a bad day. And no one is making that choice but you. You can't control what life gives you. You can only control what you do with it." It's like I sat there and thought about it for a minute, and I was like, holy shit, I'm choosing to be miserable.
And it sunk in.
It sunk in, and I was a different person, and I am eternally grateful for that man. He was somewhat of a bit of a father figure to me because I was at odds with my father a lot, and my dad was more competitive with me than, more like that than parenty. And I learned a lot from Rick, and I really appreciated my time with him. He had been married a few times, a bunch of kids. He was a retired cop out of Anchorage. He ran a K-9 unit. And then I think toward the end there, he was like running the firing range or something like that, if I remember. Haven't talked to him in a long time. I got to track him down. I heard he's still out here in the valley somewhere. I need to go find him. But yeah, his little 5 minutes of, giving a shit about some irritable kid changed his life forever. And I bet you I've told that story to 100 people. Like, you're making a choice here.
Yeah.
Like, make a different choice.
Well, the interesting thing is that you listened, because as a younger person, a lot of times those lessons might not soak in until, whenever they decide to, or maybe they don't,
Yeah.
So something about it hit home with you, and that's cool.
Yeah, it just clicked at the right time for me. Whatever words he chose to use just happened to hit me just right. And man, I still, have my faults in that regard. You'll fall short periodically, and you'll let the the irritation or the frustration sink in. But in general, it's a much worse way to live. Just find the good. It's everywhere. It's all around you. Like if you look for anywhere and try to find positive things, you can in some of the worst situations. I mean, I watched my dad die and get like worked on in front of me.
Oh God.
And that day, I was pointing out in my head that he had a quintuple bypass 9 years prior. And I got 9 years with him that I shouldn't have got.
Yeah.
Like that day. Like some of the conversations that I'd had with him the week before were massively moving for me. Like we hadn't hunted together in 10 years. And he's got a pond out here that's got like pumps and stuff in it. And he was out working on it, and I was trying to help him with something. And I just, for some reason or other, I had got this property up north that I'd been trying to cultivate and get to where it's, decent for hunting. And out of nowhere, I just said, hey, why don't you come up and come hunting with me? Hadn't tried to hunt with him in 10 years. He'd always ask me. I'd always tell him, no, I'm too busy. And for some reason or another, I asked him. And to this day, I have no idea why I asked him, because I wasn't prepared for that at all. I hadn't thought about it. I just asked him. And he said, oh, I'll think about it. And then my mom told me later that he was so excited and whatnot. And so, thank God he died thinking I wanted to hunt with him again and not taking that to his grave,
Damn.
Like it's how easy it would have been to just be mad that he's gone and I never get to talk to him again, which, believe me, the year I'd had after he died, I would have really loved to be able to talk to my dad. Like I would have helped a lot. There'd be a lot of things that I could have gone through that I went through that I had to go through without him. And I would have much rather had him. But man, I got so much time that I shouldn't have got. I mean, there was a 50-50 coin flip at that point 9 years prior on whether or not he would live through that. So I got 9 years that tails was no, heads was yes.
Wow.
Right? And they were the best 9 years I'd had with him. Our relationship was so much better. It prompted the whole sale of the business and moving on, because he came back with all this energy and started to try to tell me what to do again, stand over the top of me and micromanage me. And I'm like, okay, that's it. It's you or me. I don't care which. I'll go do something else. I don't care, but I am not coming in here and having you stand over the top of me and tell me how to do a job I've been doing for 20 years. We're done. Take your pick. So you can leave or I can leave, and I really don't care which. And that got him to retire, and we got to have a good relationship. From like 18 or 17 on, we didn't have a very good relationship. And so from my 32 on was pretty good. It was really pretty good. I actually could talk to him about stuff and wanted to, instead of just feeling like he'd always trying to do stuff with me when he'd just treated me like garbage all day. And it's like, which is also why I took the standpoint I took when I bought the place. I was like, we're going to have a good time if it costs me every penny, because I am not spending another day doing a hobby that should be fun and making it stressful and irritable and have everybody walk around angry. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, sharing work with your family is a special relationship, and it tends to either pressure does one of two things.
Don't do it.
It will crumble it, or it'll make it stronger. And some people make it work, and I got a lot of respect at the people that can. And also, you see examples where it doesn't work, and it's I don't know. There's no right or wrong answer if you should or shouldn't do it. It's just like it's unique,
I would say don't do it.
Yeah.
I really would, because man, it's not worth your relationship. Like my kids are not gonna take over this business. I won't do it. I won't risk it. It's not worth it. Sorry, did you not get enough attention today? It's just not worth the risk of having a bad relationship with your children.
Yeah.
Just to have them in your life in that regard. I'd rather have them find their own way and have some good quality time outside of that.
Yeah, we better.
You gonna feel that?
That'll come through, yeah.
Enough. Nope. She's going to think this is a game now. You do realize that, right? No.
I would just put it wherever
She'll just chew on it, dude.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Can you hide it on her?
Can I hide it?
Yeah. Can you put it up somewhere or something? Or
There, hang on.
yeah, let's just take a break.
Yeah. Should I just put her in the other room?
Because otherwise, that's
She'll probably start.
That's
I know.
Show up, yeah. A little bit's okay, but
Yeah. I just put it up there. You saw me. Back at it.
Little dog break.
Pause for the dog break.
Does Rogan do dog breaks?
I don't think he has his dogs on ever.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what makes our podcast special.
Because you're going to involve the dogs.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we'll get
It's
them
real
on
life.
sometime.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get 'em on
Interview
the
the
cast.
dogs. Yeah, there you go.
They might not have much to say about.
No, it'd be a lot of drawn out pauses with a bark.
Yeah, man. What else? What else is going on?
What else is going on? Just trying to keep up with the shop, man. We're keep expanding so much that there's always product that needs to go online or sent out to redistribution. Well, we're putting the system. We're trying to change systems over so our inventory talks to the website and in the store. So every single solitary thing where you can buy it in the store or not is accurate and shows available. Mm-hmm. So that's the next goal in our expansion. But trying to do it all has been pretty tough. I think we got about 4 employees starting in the next 30 to 45 days, and that should be enough to where that stuff will get done pretty quick.
Well, let's talk about mad scientist stuff. You have some stuff in the hopper. Right, we've kind of talked a little bit about it.
Yeah, yeah. What am I working on right now?
Vanes, fletching.
What the heck are you talking about?
Fletching jigs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're on Revolution 7 of the fletching jig that Mark and I are working on.
Yeah.
It's pretty exciting. I basically, used every fletching jig that I've ever been able to get my hands on and had complaints about certain products and certain things, certain ways they work and whatnot, and I'm trying to resolve all those with something a little different. I would say it's probably similar to a true helical jig, but not. And I don't want to get into depth on it yet because I'm not sure it's all going to work out the way it's supposed to. So I don't want to say it's going to do something when it doesn't.
Yeah.
And have somebody go back to this. But the idea is that you fletch all the fletches at one time, not individually. But you can't fuck it up. Is pretty much the premise. It's any idiot can do it. Trying to make it very easy and achievable for anybody to use.
Well, and fletching 3 or 4 fletchings at one time is a lot faster than one at a time.
It is. It takes longer to load if you're doing 3 or 4 at a time, and it will. The premise or the idea is to have it do 3 or 4.
Oh wow!
And
I thought you were going to discriminate against 4.
No, too many of you knuckleheads are using it. And there's not a 4 fletch at one time jig on the market, so it would be unique in itself.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know of one. I don't know of one. I know several of the 3 at one times, but not a 4 at one time.
Yeah.
And it's all for the most part going to be machined aluminum. So like cleaning, it's easy. Long-term durability is easy. It's very unique. I've shown it to a couple of people in the industry, and they're pretty jacked at what I've got coming. But there's still a couple more changes to it on making sure it works correctly and a little easier to operate, because some of the early phases of it was hard to get an arrow in and out or a fletch in and out of it. So it'd take a little more time, and it's definitely going to take more time than a true helical jig, but hopefully not terribly more is the goal here. So probably about 2 more revs, I bet, and it'll actually be functioning. I definitely want to be able to put it up for sale before next year, but maybe sooner. Just depends. I want to play with it a little while and actually use it a little bit and make sure it works really well before I start selling it to people. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I thought there was like another invention in the hopper too, but it's not coming to me.
My drawboard.
The drawboard?
Yeah, the drawboard third axis tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which we've seen in
it's been in multiple
rudimentary.
videos.
Yeah.
It's my crude version, and we play with it a lot to make sure it works right and does everything that we want to do before we try to manufacture something. But the point of that one is to make it to where it adapts to a standard original easy press or easy green, because that's what most people have. Originally when I thought that whole thing up, I designed a bow press around it, like an entire functioning bow press and everything that all operated around that drawboard concept. Because the biggest problem I ran into running a shop and working on bows is taking your bow out of the bow press and putting it in a drawboard and then putting it back in the bow press. It's a complete pain in the butt. It takes a lot of time. So why not have a draw board that's integrated with your press that you don't actually have to take the bow like vertically to horizontally or anything like that out of the press. It stays at the same angle, so it's easier to get in and out. And what I've finally came to does all that. I've just got it at the manufacturer trying to figure out how to mass produce it. Once he gets that hammered out, we will get that out into the industry. And I think I'm trying to be around $300 to $350 on that. And the fletching jig, we're trying to be around $100. Don't hold me to it. It's what ends up in manufacturing. And if it costs more to make than we initially think, or we can't make enough of them to get the cost down, it may vary a little bit. But that's the target, is to try to be at those functioning price points, because I think that's fair for what the tools do.
How are people responding to the insert, outserts? What do you call them? Half certs, MFJJ,
the
titanium.
I just call them titanium 5mm inserts, but incredibly well. I think we're up to 8,000 inserts, which is way more than I ever thought we'd sell.
Damn.
Originally, when I thought I'd made myself 1,000 inserts for myself at one point. It's like, no one's going to buy this thing. It's too expensive, but I always wanted it.
Yeah.
And nobody made any in the actual industry that I had seen. So I was like, well, somebody's got to do it, so I'll do it. I tried to get Iron Will to do it for a year. Like you're missing something here. This is more practical for what you're trying to do, and you're already turning titanium and you're already making these parts, and you didn't really feel it. It was he thought it was inferior to what he was making, so he wasn't interested. And I understand that. I mean, he really likes his system, and when you use his system correctly, it works very good. It really does, but it's a little more finicky, and the average guy, I think, is going to avoid it a little bit just because it's a little finicky. And I just wanted something you could put in every arrow and make it simple and easy. And the nice thing about 5mm is their internals are all the same. So regardless of who made it, it mates up to it. Every 5mm arrow fits. So that was part of the reason why I wanted to go that way. Plus, 5mm keeps the thread in the body of the arrow, whereas 4mm pushes the thread out in front of the arrow, and it makes it so much harder to stop it from bending, which was the whole point. If your insert fails, you're screwed. No matter what kind of arrow it is, no matter who makes it, if your connection point has a failure in it, that whole thing ain't going in anywhere. So that was the easiest solution for what we most commonly used, and it's been perceived really well, and I got so much of a demand off that, I went, well, let's make some steel ones if people like this shape and dimension. So we have a 50 grain steel, a 75 grain steel, and a 100 grain steel that are around $4 an insert instead of $750, which the titaniums are.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's gone really, really well, and it's sparked a whole bunch of other things with the company that makes those for me in Montana. We're doing a 4mm insert. I made some collars for those if people just have to have a collar. They want the end of their arrow covered. I did make collars that adapt with the titanium standard 5mm, and they slide over, I think it's about a 1/4 inch over the end of the arrow itself, and they do come back off. So it's just slid fit, pressure fit, so you can take them on and off if you want. Makes it 5/16 on the point diameter from the 17/64 that the normal 5mm run. So that's been those projects, which these have all just been out of necessity that I couldn't find things that did this. So I went, well, I guess I'll just make them.
Yeah, if no one's going to do it,
If
right?
no one's going to do it, somebody ought to. And
It's a dirty job.
It is.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that I'd made, I just didn't, see what I wanted out there, so I just made it.
Well, I think having these trusted relationships with manufacturers is going to end up being a really good thing long term, because you have a lot of ideas, and to be able to have the people in place that can help bring them to life is that's a big deal, right?
Yeah, I've definitely provided insight and ideas for manufacturers over the years. There are several that I'd beg them to make something different. The black gold dual track, and I'm not going to say I'm the only person who said that, but I harped on them for 8 or 9 years. I was like, you need a 2-pin with one of the pins that moves. Period. You did, and they just didn't make it because of the Trophy Ridge patent that expired. And then all of a sudden, everybody, 3 or 4 of them, made vertical pins where you could adjust them. You got the Spot Hog, the Black Gold, CBE made one this year, and the Torch. Those would have all been a patent violation of Trophy Ridge's patent originally, where they made the 5-pin vertical sight. So that's why you didn't see it for a long time. You could see a 2-pin that didn't move because that wasn't a patent violation because the pin didn't move. So Spot Hog's original double pin, that wasn't a violation of it, but the triple stack would have been, the dual track would have been. But yeah, I begged them for like 8 or 9 years. I was like, please God, make this, and then they finally did, and I love that sight. It's
Nice.
a freaking great sight.
Well, if we're doing gear shout-outs, I think the HHA TETRA RYZ has potential to be really cool. It from my experience with it this far, it's like it's simple. You don't see all the extra fluff around it. Like it is what it is. The adjustments are simple. It's clean. There's like no red flags. And
There's
and
one red
having
flag.
well, let's talk about it. But
Okay.
having their scope slide in and out is nice too for bringing more or less light into the sight.
Oh yeah, the little.
It's a
what do
good
they
simple
call it?
way to
What
do
they call that?
it, but
has
it
a
doesn't
name.
seem cheap or chintzy. It's
No, it has a name though. Rheostat, and Excel did that too. They have
Okay.
they have a guard that moves up and down,
Yeah.
so you can leave it uncovered or cover it.
Yeah.
It's different. It doesn't slide forward; it rotates over.
Are you going to talk about the rail?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about for sure. So for the longest time, I didn't carry them because of that. Same
Yeah.
with I wouldn't carry the Fast Eddie XL for a long time, and I finally just gave up because so many people asked for it. So the rail, or the part that moves up and down, does not adjust.
Yeah.
And on a lot of bows, not so many anymore, but if you go back to single cam days or hybrid days where your string is not straight with the riser, that rail becomes an issue if you can't adjust that rail to line up with that string. Now,
Otherwise, then it's just a shimming kind of goofy.
you can shim the base. Yeah.
Yeah.
So back in the day, before they even had adjustments like that, you'd take like clear packaging that a product would come in and cut a piece of it out, back the screws off and slide it under one side and tighten the screw back up. And you were literally popping the base where they mounted against the riser over to try to get it somewhat square. Because once you started shooting out past 40, 50, 60, 70, you couldn't hit anything left or right because it wouldn't line up with the string path.
Right.
Back in the day, they like your Toxonics, your Sherlock sights, your Target sights all had that. All of them. Like any Target sight worth its salt at all that you bought back in the day when hunting sights were $50 to $100 and Target sights were $200 to $300, they all had that adjustment. Well, a lot of the hunting sites do, but a good portion of them don't. And I've been a little whiny little bitch about ones that don't. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
So the Tetra or the HHAs, I wouldn't because they didn't have it. And for the longest time, I wouldn't carry the Spot Hogs because they didn't have it.
Yeah,
And
so
they're-
for simple purposes, your rail is the thing that slides up and down.
Yeah.
And if it's out of level for some whatever reason, if it's out of level with your string,
Yes.
then that rail is going to slide off kilter, which is going to make your left and rights off at distance.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was, like I said, more common when cam systems weren't even with the left to right positions. Now, even today, though, you'll shim a cam left to right, and it'll move it, but it won't. So as long as it stays relatively centered, it pushes the wheel lean, but the string track is in about the same spot. So typically, your string is still square with the sight head itself, but 10 years ago they weren't, and so that was a bigger sticking point for me then. Like we checked yours and it was perfectly square.
Yeah.
Your string and the rail matched up great. That's awesome. It's just if you end up in a position where yours doesn't, there's not really a viable solution. I mean,
Then
you
you're-
can grab with a crescent wrench and bend it
Yeah.
and try to bend it to where it lines up with your string, but that's been my
You're basically
my
like
gripe.
eBaying your bow sight and
Yeah,
then buying
well,
another one.
right. And I like to be able to adjust the rail
Yeah.
at distance. Like I'll set it up and shoot something out to 100 yards, and if it's a little off, I will move the rail.
Okay.
That's part of why I really like Black Gold's higher level stuff is they actually have a micro drive rail.
Yeah.
You can loosen the lock screw and turn it just a little bit, and it drives it. Whereas most of the others, if you look at the two screws that mount to the back of the rail, one of them is like oblong hold and one of them is round hold, so it flops back and forth. But it's a loosey goosey fudging sort of thing, where Black Gold's actually is driven. I want to say Sherlock's newer stuff, they actually made a couple that were driven as well. But those are the only times I've seen it. Outside of that, it's just like a loose little hole that just has slop in it. So you can move the rail a little bit left to right. And for me, I don't understand why you wouldn't offer that.
Yeah.
Like if you've been in the side industry for, like HHA, for example, over 20 years.
Because it's a couple screws.
It is, but it isn't. So a lot of them integrate like the same thing Spot Hog did with their Fast Eddie XL is they integrated the whole rotational head with the base. So now it gets complicated to try to move the rail the way they designed it. And the RYZ isn't much different. The rail position, the way the parts integrate into it, it would make it difficult. They'd have to redesign their sight. And so what it really boils down to is when they designed it, they weren't thinking about that, or they didn't think it was important. That's all.
Yeah.
And that body's been around a long time.
Is that just a price point thing? Because it seems like once you get to the higher price points, then it's always there. Or is that just because the higher price points are for the tournament people that require it to be there?
Fast Eddie XLs are $300 to $400 depending on what head you put on them. Tetra RYZs are $300 to $400 depending on what head's on it. Is that a price point?
I don't know.
No, no. Price point sites are $100 to $200, maybe $250.
Yeah.
Once you get above that, now you're talking about specific things. And for the record, there are several sites in that price that have those adjustments. Mm-hmm. It's just whether or not the company determines them to be valid or important or not. So I go back to they've been making that same structure for a really long time, and they don't want to have to make it differently or redesign it.
Yeah.
None of this stuff showed up when you were shooting 30, 40, 50 yards. So you had the creation of the laser rangefinder in the late 90s because somebody wouldn't shoot past 40 because you couldn't tell how far away stuff was. They had these old antiquated two little graphs that you move this knob and the images come over the top of each other. That was the original rangefinder. When those two images lined up, it gave you a distance.
Yeah.
The company was called Ranging, if I remember right. And I had one of those way back in the day. But the original Bushnell laser rangefinder that was like this big and it ranged like a couple hundred yards or something. It was gargantuan. You push a button and it took like 2 seconds and it would come back and tell you how far away it was. And oh my God, that changed the world. You could actually guarantee how far away something was.
Yeah.
And now they've gravitated into this tiny little thing that will read 1.5 miles that fits in your shirt pocket. But that allowed people to shoot farther. And if you look at the timeline of these things, a lot of those sites, the basis of them were still designed similar to that timeline. So you didn't shoot far enough for it to matter. Oh, technical difficulties.
We're good.
Right. So you didn't shoot far enough for it to matter is the reality of it. Now that we're shooting farther, these things matter for me. I care about it. It's important to me. So, and Josh Johnson at Spot Hog and I have argued for years about it. And at the end of the day, he said, well, if the axles were drilled straight in the limbs, you wouldn't have this problem. I said, yeah, but they're not. So it's still a problem. You have to resolve it.
You're relying on somebody else.
You're relying on somebody else to resolve that issue. And at the end of the day, everything has variance. Everything has variance. So you need to have an adjustment for variance. And if you choose to not have it, you're taking away that opportunity from somebody else who's running into that problem. Where if you just had it, you could resolve the problem.
Well, and especially you talk about a bow with all those parts of the stick and string that need to work.
It's a very crude tool.
Yeah.
It really is. And, enough of the more manufacturers that make movable sights offer that adjustment than don't. If it wasn't important, why are most of them offering it?
Yeah.
Right? So please redesign those things. Pretty please. Pretty please.
That's an MFJJ request.
Well, and honestly, I love everything about HHA's site other than that. I had the original, I'm trying to remember what the model of it was. It was like an OL 5000, an Optimizer Lite 5000, which was based off of, not to name names, but the Sightmaster movable sight way back in the day.
Yeah.
That was the original movable sight, and it actually had like a finger adjustment tool on it and whatnot. It's still red. Yeah, it had a little finger adjustment tool on it. You could move it at full draw. Nobody's actually still done that since then. It was pretty cool. You could actually, if an animal moved, you could have your finger on it and pull it, and it would change the distance. That was really cool. But the HHA came out with a fully aluminum version, very similar, not exactly 100%. And I had used their sights for, I think I used it for like 6 or 7 years. And there was a bigger version, the original one. They came out with the OL 5019, which is still made today, and the chassis got a lot smaller, but that chassis had less range. So I still had like 3 or 4 of the older, bigger bodied ones because you could shoot farther with them. Because, I was playing long distance games in the 90s, kids. It was fun. But I loved their sights, but they never addressed the rail. Every sight they've ever made, they've never addressed it. Not once. And same with Spot Hog. They've never addressed the rail adjustment on any sight they've ever made. So, and you're talking about companies that have been around since the 90s. Both of those companies that don't have rail adjustment have been making sights since the 90s.
Yeah.
So
the whole rail thing is like, it's all good unless it's not.
That's right. I mean, if you bolt it on, it squares up, you're fine. If it doesn't, you gotta do some fuckery.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it boils down to. If you're going to shoot a long ways with it, and if you're charging somebody $300 to $400 for a sight, that should be on there. It just should. I'm sorry. I don't
have
mean
to be sorry.
Well, I don't mean to be a dick, but it should exist. Like, why is it on all these other sites but not yours?
Yeah.
I mean, there's like I don't know of, other than those two brands, I don't know of anybody else who doesn't address it. Like every other sight manufacturer addresses it. Excel addresses it. Black Gold addresses it. CBE addresses it. Who am I missing? The Redline, more of a price point functioning site, addresses it. I mean, come on. It's important. Put it on your damn site. Sorry.
On that note, on this episode of Rants with Josh,
there's some things I'm passionate about. I get a little fired up. That bugs me.
We talked a little bit more about gear. I'd like to know from the people who they'd like to have here on this podcast.
Yeah.
Drop their names. We want to have people here. We're going to record like this as frequently as we can, but, you know, we like talking with other people too.
Absolutely. Have known a lot of people over the years that are pretty interesting, so I might be able to persuade a person or two to come on.
There's definitely the local people too. Like, I want to make sure we get Grimes on right away. I want to make sure, I don't know. We're just getting this thing rolling, but.
Yeah. No, Justin and I would have stories that would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely some people we could have on that would
lots of
be
local
entertaining.
Legends. Lots of local legends.
Yeah, there are. There's a surprisingly large amount of
really good
archers around here.
Too,
We really do. Yeah, but you know, when you have a constant, decent quality shop that's around for a long time, you end up with a lot of good people around. You know, no different than if you go down to Eugene. There's a lot of incredible people down there.
You're building
they've
culture.
been there. They've been there for so long.
Archery's in the culture.
Yes, and they've been educating people on how to get better, hence why we're trying to get you better. It grows, and it expands.
Yeah.
It's neat. So we'll see who we can bring on.
On that note, our fire's out. Podcast is over.
Nighty-night, kids.
Subscribe to this YouTube channel.
Oh, yes. Subscribe, for sure.
We got to determine if this is going to be a thing and where these people can go find that thing if it is.
Yeah, we have to see that the response is valid because both of us have other jobs, right? Full-time jobs. And we both have YouTube channels already that is on top of our other jobs. So if we're going to continue this, we have to see good response from what we've already done. And then we'll put some parameters on what we expect you to do before we
leave it a comment. Run it up to 1,000 likes. 1,000 likes. They can do that.
That's easy.
Think?
Yeah, that should be easy.
Yeah. And if we get to 2,000 likes, we'll share Josh's last date story.
Cut.
Goodbye. Da-na-na-na.